Hello, this video is on the subject of transportation. This video will cover the material for the transportation part of the West Virginia Mine Foreman test. The format for the video is question and answer. This video will also reference the question and answer to the West Virginia Office of Miner Self-Safety Training Mine Foreman Study Guide, and that's the 2019 edition. And these questions are in the transportation part of the study guide. Question 1. During equipment moves, how shall mining equipment be transported or trammed? And the answer is only by qualified personnel under the supervision of a certified foreman. And when we talk about this equipment move, we're talking about moving a piece of equipment from maybe the outside of your mine to the working face. I think it would be when we're moving equipment along a track entry. But when you're doing that, equipment moves, only qualified personnel will be involved in that, and that will be under the supervision of a certified foreman. I think I've read in the regulations that red hats or apprentice miners could not be involved in these equipment moves. Question 2, during equipment moves, what shall be done to provide clearance and avoid accidental contact with power lines? And the answer to that is face equipment shall be insulated and assembly shall be removed. You know, kind of what I think about is maybe if we were moving a roof bolter from the bottom area of your mine to a working section and we had track and a trolley wire, we'll just think about the roof bolter, the ATRS on that or something that could get into that trolley wire and cause a lot of problems. So I think that would be removed. And also something some of my friends that's been involved in this talk about, they put maybe a belting or something over the equipment to insulate that in case it would come into contact with a trolley wire or power wire. So question 3, what are some unsafe haulage practices? And the answer is making flying switches, permitting men to ride on push cars, riding loaded cars, coupling cars in motion, and getting on or off moving cars. All that stuff pretty well is self-explanatory with the exception of maybe making flying switches. And I say that because I didn't know what that meant for the longest time. But what it means is you cannot run a switch. I've worked at mines where, going in the mine, we had to get off and throw the switch, but coming out, you could run them. Well, you're not supposed to do that. That's a flying switch. So even coming out of the mine, you're supposed to get off and throw the switch. Question 4, what should be provided along haulage roads to permit persons to pass moving cars with safety? And the answer is that sufficient clearance of at least 24 inches and shelter holes shall be provided along haulage roads. So anywhere we're on the track, equipment on the track, we have to have on at least the wide side clearance or the clearance side, we have to have 24 inches of clearance for people that could be along the track. So here's a little picture I have the track you can see, and I have a piece of equipment on it, and on that side opposite the trolley wire, you have to have 24 inches must be maintained on the clearance side, and also we have to have shelter holes, and we'll talk more about shelter holes in the next few questions, but they have to be, they cannot be more than 100 feet apart. Question 5, what clearance shall be maintained along the track between equipment and the track and ribs and other objects along the track such as timbers, cribs, etc. And that is not less than 24 inches on the clearance side shall be maintained along the entries between the car and any other object. And this clearance side may also be referred to as the wide side. So we have to designate one side as being the clearance side or the wide side, and on that side you have to maintain 24 inches of clearance. So question 6, what clearance shall be maintained along the track on the trolley wire side between the equipment on the track and ribs and other objects along the track such as timbers and cribs, etc.? And the answer is not less than 12 inches. And the trolley wire side may also be referred to as the tight side. So I have this picture again, and we have the trolley wire, we have the track, and we have the equipment on the track. So on the trolley wire side, we have to maintain at least 12 inches. And again, we could refer to that as the tight side. And on the clearance side, we have to have 24 inches. And the reason we want a minimum of 12 inches, but we shouldn't have anyone on the trolley wire side. We want to keep people away from that trolley wire as much as we can. So since there's nobody really supposed to be there, the clearance doesn't have to be as much, but we still want to maintain at least 12 inches. Question 7, on side tracks, what clearance shall be maintained along the track between the equipment on the track and ribs and other objects along the track, such as timbers, cribs, or etc.? And the answer is a minimum of 24 inches of clearance shall be maintained on the designated clearance side along each track and side track. So if you have a side track, and you may call them a spur, I don't know what you call them at your mine, but it's just a place to get out of the way. Maybe it's not very deep, maybe 50 feet or something, just to pull a car in by so other things can get by. But even in that area, you do have to designate a clearance side, and on that clearance side you would maintain 24 inches. Question 8, when supplies are loaded and unloaded along the track, what amount of clearance shall be provided? And the answer is that ample clearance shall be provided, but never less than 24 inches. So a lot of these answers are 24 inches, but I think it's safe to say that anywhere people are going to be along the track or even along a belt, if people are going to be there, you have to have 24 inches of clearance. Question 9, in addition to 24 inches of clearance, what else shall be provided on haulage ways to protect people? And the answer to that is shelter holes shall be provided and maintained to protect persons along track haulage ways. Question 10, what's the maximum distance between shelter holes? And that is 100 feet. Question 11, what is the minimum size of shelter holes? And the answer is the minimum size of shelter holes is 5 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and as high as the travel space. So here we have a picture. So here's a shelter hole, 5 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and as high as the travel space. I have never seen a shelter hole in a mine, because the mines where I worked that we had track, we always had cross cuts within 100 feet. So the cross cut was just your shelter hole. But if the cross cuts are more than 100 feet, you may have to have shelter holes 5 feet deep, 4 feet wide. So, I used to have a little struggle saying, well, which is the depth, which is the width? They're different numbers, so which one applies? And the way I remember that, if you were along the track and here come a piece of track equipment going really fast and it's out of control and you're afraid it was going to wreck, so you get in this shelter hole, well, how far do you want to get back in that shelter hole away from that entry to be safe? And that's the big dimension, that's 5 feet. So you want to get back as far as you can. So the 5 foot dimension is the depth of the shelter hole. Question 12, what should be placed on the front and rear of moving trips? And that answer is that is a conspicuous light shall be placed on both the front and rear of all moving trips. So a conspicuous light is an obvious light that it's going to be easy to see. So just imagine at your mine, if you have track and you're going in the mine and you have a flat car of supplies behind you, you're pulling those into the mine. On that back of that flat car would maybe be a strobe light or something that would be obvious to see. And I also think the law allows you to have reflectors there, reflective tape, but you would want to make enough of it that it would be easy for someone to see. Question 13, who shall see the conspicuous light that's placed on the front and rear of trips? And that's the answer is that the motorman or trip rider. And that could be part of the pre-operational check. So a motorman, before he would operate that motor, would make sure of several things on the pre-operational check. But one of these things ought to be that conspicuous light on both the front and the rear. 14, who shall provide the conspicuous light that will be placed on the front and rear of all moving trips? And that's the mine foreman. So the mine foreman is responsible for everything at the mine, and he's certainly responsible that you have the conspicuous light, so he provides it. But then the motorman does have the obligation of doing the pre-operational check and make sure that it's there and working. 15, what equipment is required on locomotives, man trips, or any track equipment? And the answer to that is a lifting jack and handle, and that's, just obviously in case you had a derailment, you would have the ability to get the piece of equipment back on the track. 16, when making up trips to haul rail, pipe, or long supplies, what shall be done to protect the equipment operator? And the answer is one or more empty cars should be provided or placed between the locomotive and the material car. So we want to make sure that a piece of pipe or rail or something doesn't slide forward and hit the operator. Some people tell me that the material cars they have where they haul rail or pipe or long supplies maybe has a bumper on the front of it that would keep the material from sliding forward. So just make sure you do that safely, but I think the law requires, and the test question is going to say one or more empty cars should be provided or placed between the locomotive and the material car. 17, in what manner shall trips not be operated on main haulage ways? And the answer is as being pushed except for switching. So this is a real interesting question, and this is directly out of the transportation regulations, part of the West Virginia mine laws. But basically, it says you're not allowed to push any equipment in the mine on the track except for switching. So I worked at a mine one time where we took supplies to a section on a flat car. So when we left the outside, we had a motor on each end, front and back, going into the mine. And when we got to the last switch, we pulled the in-by motor out of the way, and then we pushed that flat car of supplies to the section, unhooked from it, left the flat car there, and took the other motor out. But you're not allowed to push. You're not allowed to push a car in a mine except for switching. So keep that in mind. That's a regulation. Question 18, what are the specific duties of motormen and brakemen relative to ventilating doors? And the answer is they shall not damage, block, or permit the doors to remain open. These doors are important. They're there for a purpose. So we've got to make sure the motorman doesn't damage them, block them, or allow them to remain open after they go through them. Question 19, how shall man trip be operated? And the answer is man trip shall be operated under full control and a man trip speed. And I talk about this in classes quite often. We work in a very hazardous occupation. There's a lot of hazards involved in working in an underground coal mine. And I don't think one of the hazards should be a man trip. I think man trips should be operated safely, not too fast, full control, and I think it would be silly to get hurt on a man trip. Question 20, at what speed shall man trip be operated? And the answer is at speeds not to exceed 12 miles per hour. Question 21, who shall supervise the operation of man trips? And the answer is a foreman or other designated competent person shall supervise the operation of man trips. So a foreman, in the transportation regulations, it does address that a foreman shall supervise the operation of a man trip. I don't think the law requires the foreman to run the man trip. I know it doesn't require that. I'm not even sure it requires the foreman to be on the man trip, but I just think the foreman needs to make sure that whoever's running the man trip is going to run it safely. Question 22, when should miners not get on or off man trips? And the answer is they should not get off on the trolley wire side unless protection and clearance is maintained. And protection will be defined as the trolley wire being guarded. So again, the question, when should miners not get on or off man trips? And maybe it should say, where shall miners not get on or off man trips? And that's on the trolley wire side. The trolley wire is 300 volts of DC voltage, and that would give you a little shock there that you probably wouldn't enjoy. So you should get off away from the trolley wire unless the trolley wire is guarded. 23, where should track cars not be coupled? And the answer is that from the trolley wire side or inside of a curb. So you shouldn't be on the trolley wire side. There's no use to be there. And if you were on the inside of a curve trying to couple cars together, you could be in a pinch point, and you would want to avoid that. Question 24, what shall be provided on side tracks so clearance is maintained between the end of the trips placed on the side track and moving trips along the track? And the answer is that is a clearance. A clearance point shall be marked with an approved device. So if you're going to leave a piece of equipment in a side track, you need to make sure you get it pulled in far enough that equipment on the track will not hit it. So how do you know how far to put that so that you're going to have the clearance? Is there needs to be a clearance point marked with some reflector or something like that, so you would obviously know what it was, and you want to put the equipment in by that mark. And I think that's question 25. Where shall cars, locomotives, and other equipment be placed on a side track, and that's in by the clearance point. 26, what are some primary requirements of good mine track? And the answer is that it's proper size, well tied and spiked, joints are well bolted, it is properly laid and kept clean and well drained. A lot of these answers are just common sense answers. Question 27, what are the hazards associated with poorly maintained track? And the answer to that, the hazards that would be associated with frequent derailments. So you can just think about what's the hazards with derailments or frequent derailments. And I've been going over this question since I've been teaching this mine foreman class. And you think about that. And I do remember an accident one time where there was a piece of equipment derailed, and the person was trying to jack that equipment with a jack, trying to get it back on the rail. And the bar hit the person in the head. And I think that person eventually died from those injuries. So, maybe because the track was poorly maintained, we had a derailment, could have cost this person's death. But, just think about the hazards that's associated with the derailment. Question 28, what are some primary causes of haulage accidents? And the answer is insecure track, which just means it's not anchored properly, it moves. Insufficient clearance and unsafe practices. Insufficient clearance is, maybe not maintaining the 24 inches of clearance. Unsafe practices may be going too fast. Question 29, how shall haulage ways and travel ways be maintained? The answer is haulage ways shall be clean and properly maintained. 30, what kind of switch throws are safest? The answer is automatic switch throws are the safest. And I have never seen these, but people tell me that you have switches now in the mine that as you approach the switch, you can stop and shine your light on an object, and when that detects that light, it will throw the switch. You can actually go through the switch, turn around, and put your light on another object, and will throw that switch back. So, obviously those will be very nice and safe, because you do not even have to get off your ride, and it just does itself. So automatic switch throws are the safest. That's hard to say. 31, how shall track switches be kept aligned? And the answer is with the main track. So whatever you determine is the main line going into the mine, that's how the switches should be kept aligned. So if you're going in the mine and you go to a section, so maybe you throw the switch and go through, then you need to throw it back in the direction of the main track. 32, what shall be provided to prevent the rail cars from moving? And the answer is stop blocks, chains, and clevises. So the example I used earlier at the mine that I worked at, when we took the car of supplies back to a section and left it, we just had to make sure it didn't roll away. So we would, you could use any of these stop blocks, chain, or clevis to block the car from rolling. Question 33, what is meant by track gauge? And the answer is the track gauge is defined as the distance measured between the rails measuring ball to ball. So I have a picture here. So the track gauge is just measured from the inside of one side of the rail to the other side, and the ball is the top of the rail. So inside to inside is the track gauge, and I'm not sure what it is. I believe 42 or 43 inches. I think is a fairly common track gauge. 34, whose duty is it to inspect the locomotive prior to putting it in service? And the answer is that's the motorman, and again, that would be part of a pre-operational check. Question 35, if the locomotive is not coupled to the trip ahead, what distance must be maintained between the locomotive and the trip? And the answer is at least 300 feet. So I think on track, if we have different pieces of equipment being operated on the track, I think we want at least 300 feet distance between the track equipment. At least 300 feet. 36, what shall be provided on all track haulage cars which are regularly connected and disconnected? And the answer is as automatic couplers. Question 37, prior to section equipment being operated, who shall examine the roadway to be traveled? And the answer is the equipment operator. And what this means is a shuttle car operator on a section should walk his roadways before he travels them to make sure that there's no objects in the way, make sure it's safe. And sometimes I think maybe we forget to do that, but again, it's just a safety procedure, and that shuttle car operator should examine the roadways to be traveled. Question 38, what should be provided on all self-propelled track haulage equipment? And the answer is that is an emergency stop switch or other device to de-energize the equipment. So most track equipment, I think, has an e-stop. Some of the track equipment I've operated had to have a foot switch where you had to have your foot pushing down on a switch to keep it running. So maybe a couple safety devices there, but all track equipment will have an e-stop button somewhere for the operator to de-energize it in case of emergency. Question 39, what should be provided where miners load and unload from conveyor belts? And this is where miners ride belts. I mean, we can still ride belts in a mine in West Virginia if we follow certain guidelines. But where miners load and unload or get on and off belts, we have to have adequate clearance of at least 36 inches, and that's to the side. A proper illumination at loading and unloading stations, we have to have some lights there that is observable to all persons, and suitable communication. So where people ride belts, 36 inches of clearance to the side, lights that people can see, and communication. Question 40, how shall travel ways be kept along conveyor belts? And the answer is a clear travel way of at least 24 inches wide shall be provided on both sides of all conveyor belts. And I think that answer is a little bit misleading. I think what we can say here is if people travel along a belt, you have to have 24 inches of clearance. If there is an area where you don't have 24 inches of clearance, then people are not allowed to be there. So you would need to probably put up some signs, close clearance, do not enter. Maybe at that point you would have a crossover so they could go to the other side of the belt. And so again, the question is a little bit misleading, or the answer is, again, we said that earlier on the track equipment, where people are going to be along a belt or a track, you have to have 24 inches of clearance. If you don't have that clearance, the people cannot be there. Question 41, what's the maximum speed of belts when miners are being transported? So if miners are riding belts, the maximum speed is 250 feet per minute when the minimum overhead clearance is 18 inches. 300 feet per minute when the minimum clearance is 24 inches. Question 42, how far apart should miners be spaced when riding belts? And the answer is at least 6 feet apart. 43, what minimum clearance must be maintained when miners ride belts? And the answer is a minimum of 18 inches from the top of the belt rollers to the roof where miners ride belts. So I have a picture here, and maybe I'll describe it a little bit better. 18 inches from the highest point of the belt to the lowest part of the roof. So if people are riding this belt for the entire length of the belt where they're riding, whatever the highest part of the belt is, or the belt structure, to the lowest point of the roof has to be at least 18 inches. 44, what clearance shall be maintained when the height of the coal seam permits? And this is when miners are riding belts. If you have a high coal seam, you should have not less than 24 inches of clearance. So if you're hanging the belt from the roof and you have 5 or 6 foot of coal, don't hang it closer than 24 inches, unless you have to. If people are going to be riding the belts, the more clearance they can have, the safer it will be. And again, here's another little graphic. If possible, the distance between the highest part of the belt to the lowest part of the roof should be 24 inches. Question 45, when belt conveyors that do not transport miners, start and stop switches shall be placed at 1 intervals, and that is not to exceed 1,000 feet. So if miners ride belts, you have to have a continuous pull cord on the belt. So when the miner's riding it, anytime he wants to get off at any location, he can just reach up and pull the pull cord, and the belt will stop and they can get off. And then you can pull it. I think you have to pull it 2 times to get the belt started again. So on belts that people do not ride, we don't have to have that pull cord, but we do want a remote switch, a start or stop switch, at least every 1,000 feet. And a lot of companies will put them in every door, put them more often than that, but they have to be at least every 1,000 feet. Question 46, what shall be provided where miners are required to cross moving belts? And that suitable crossing facilities should be provided. I have a little picture here. I don't know how good of a picture it is, but it's a belt and it's a crossover, and I have steps going up each side, a platform across the top, and handrails. And I believe in 2017 in West Virginia, 2 miners died from crossing a belt and getting on the belt. And actually, both of these people were certified foremen, and they were working as belt examiners, and somehow they got on the belt and they found both of these gentlemen outside. So they had rode the belt long distance, and just a tragic event, tragic accident. And so we always need to have good crossing facilities and always use them. Again, it's both of these were I'm sure fine gentlemen and highly skilled coal miners, and for some reason, just a mistake or something, that they got caught on the belt and led to their death, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. So always use the proper crossovers, and if you're in a management position, make sure they're provided and make sure everyone uses them. Question 47, what record of belt inspections are required to be kept and maintained? And that's records of daily inspections are required for all belts. So all belts are inspected every shift that you run coal on them. Question 48, what should be provided at points where supplies are regularly loaded or unloaded from belt conveyors? And the answer is that telephone or other suitable communications. Question 49, what is required when an on-shift examination of the belt conveyor and belt conveyor entry has not been made during the preceding shift? And the answer is an examination of the belt conveyor and belt conveyor entry prior to starting the belt. So, if everything's going well at your mine and the day shift's running coal, and then that belt will be examined probably in the last 3 hours of that shift. So that examination is a pre-shift for the next shift coming on, as well as the on-shift exam of the belt. So then if that happened on the day shift and the evening shift comes in and runs coal, and that belt will be inspected during that shift. But if for some reason the day shift at your mine did not run coal today, for whatever reason, power was off, equipment was down, whatever, but before the evening shift could run coal, then somebody would have to examine that belt before starting the belt. Question 50, what is required by the operator where stockpiles are provided with draw-off feeders? So this is on the outside of the line, and I feel sure this question's on the test. And the answer is the operator must submit a plan of safe operating procedures for equipment being operated on these piles and have measures in place to keep people off the piles. This plan must be submitted to Miners Health Safety and Training, and the plan must be approved by Miners Health Safety and Training. And that plan has a lot of stuff in it, but I think what you need to know for the West Virginia Mine Foreman test is if you do have these stockpiles, you have to have a plan, and that plan will be approved by the director. And here I have a picture. So what's going on? This red stocking tube stocks this coal here, and then there's a tunnel under that with feeders that feeds this coal onto a belt, and these can crust over. So we don't want people on these stockpiles on foot at all. Under no circumstance would anybody be allowed on this stockpile. There needs to be signs indicating that. And even the equipment being operated on these stockpiles have the glass has to be where it can't be pushed out. It has to have a self-contained self-rescuer in it. It has to have communications to the mine or to the prep plant or whatever. But there's been several fatalities associated with these type of stockpiles. So again, for the West Virginia Mine Foreman test, you just need to know that you have to have a plan for that, and that plan has to be approved. So that's the end of this video. Thank you.